Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Warriors Season 3, Episode 4. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, let's start off with Lee's side of things. Obviously, there's no hiding, hey, you're a cop, because, well, not only is Lee, badged up and he's in the neighborhood because he obviously stays there with Abigail, but it's also right when you have Mosley out front posted up too, that just draws more attention, which I get Jack's reservation. It's like, it's bad for business because because Abigail tries to tell him, like, right, these cops have no interest in whatever your situation is. They're just here for the plates and the counterfeit money. That's all they care for. So, and even going forward, Lee is like, yeah, let's kind of just meet at the station, which is like, Moses is like, I'm not trying to bust up your circumstances. I'm just trying to do my job. But Jack kind of gave him the business of like, right, I know what's going on between you and Abigail because they outright kissed in front of him. So he already kind of knew, I guess, what time it was too. But let's not forget, he does still know about Lee's circumstances. I still find it so interesting that he still hasn't pulled the trigger on it. Granted, I don't know if he has that buffer right now because he was deputized by Mosley. I don't know if that's enough to really cover, like, anyone coming after him. So that's, the fact, well, because Mosley plans on, like, erasing that if he really can, not unless he's lying to Lee, which it's a strong possibility. But the fact is, Jack doesn't want Lee around, especially doesn't want him around Abigail, what kind of trouble it can bring in her life, because he does care about it, because she is family. But the fact is, he hasn't pulled the trigger yet. I guess it's because now he's got a badge again. You can't really do that. It happened pretty quickly, so I don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on that circumstance. But obviously, Lee and Mosley are in Chinatown investigating, trying to find out where this counterfeit money was. And it didn't take too long for Lee to kind of narrow it down and kind of connect it to the Hopway, because the money they found, the bills they found that were counterfeit, were in Hopway territory. He found some of the counterfeit money on a Hopway hatchet man, which, interestingly, how he stumbled across it was he went to Atoy's place and he was about to get high, which I had actually completely forgotten about that because I was like worried. I was like, oh man, Lee's going to go down the rabbit hole. I was like, no, he didn't. I'd actually completely forgotten about that until he was staring at Atoy's place and he saw the guy coming out high. And I was like, oh, I'd completely forgotten about it because we only saw him do it one time. Because it's like, it's there in Lee to like kind of numb the pain. It's because it's still there. And he was actually going to light up, but he kept being like, no, I'm not going to drown myself in this. Like, he knows it's a slippery slope. I don't know if he's purely basing that on kind of like, right, he hasn't been right since Zing attacked him in season 1, episode 9, but all last season he was off. He's still suffering the headaches, and I think maybe he's just scared that, right, that vice and all that. He's seen it firsthand what it can do to a person. He's seen Bill's own vices destroy his life. So I think maybe he's got the reservation of like, I don't want to pull the trigger on this situation. So maybe, I don't know, or maybe it's just pure self-control on Lee's part. Like I said, I remember distinctly thinking at the time, oh my God, he was going to go deep down that rabbit hole and getting high all the time and lose himself. And it never happened. I mean, technically it did because he kept like dosing himself, but that wasn't as much of an issue. Like I said, he was just obviously completely off last season. And now it's like, oh, he's kind of gained some back. If he hadn't noticed that money on the table, I mean, he was already kind of pushing away, but that gave him the motivation to go like, no, let me take this money and check it out. So they know where the money is going to in the Hopway territory. So they rode deep with the San Francisco police, and Atwood, being who he is, so yeah, we'll have some men come around the back and the side, but we're going in through the front because he's very boorish in that regard of like, oh, he's bullish is kind of more so what I should say. Funny enough, considering that's the nickname given to the cops. But yeah, he goes full steam ahead. The whole like, oh, bull in a china shop thing. He goes like head first because he's stubborn and he wants to make a point, because for him, it's like, yo, I kicked Chinatown's ass in New York. I'm going to do the same thing here in San Francisco. The point I keep reiterating, though, is we don't know what the Chinatown Tong situation was like. The fact is, he walked up to the Hopway and he was like, yo, you know what I see? Fear. It's like, man, they didn't look scared to me. Seems like you were kind of projecting, like, But the fact is that it's like, right, don't do anything. We're not about to turn this into a bloodbath. So like Young June gave the order and everyone had to stand down while Atwood like beat the ever living shit out of Young June. Like the smart thing would have been to just kind of let things play out, let them like puff out their chest. You don't have to prove yourself, but Young June, he's the shit talker. He's always the one that kind of puts his foot in his mouth. That's always been Young June, so why would we expect him? Especially considering he's been on a whole other level now that he's running things. But it's like, I don't know. I don't know how his father would have handled that circumstance. To be fair, they wouldn't be as neck deep. Well, the only reason why, the Bulls are already like, the cops are already like going to come down to Chinatown because of the counterfeit money, but it's like, right, if it wasn't for Lee piecing it all together, they would have never directly come to your doorstep like this. So, but it is a shame. Like, Young Ju got the ever-living shit beat out of him, and Atwood arrested him afterwards. It's like, yeah, he assaulted the cop. It's like, funny, considering Young Ju didn't lay a hand on him. Only thing he did was spit on his, like, shoe or whatever. But it's like, that's all Young Ju never laid a hand on him. It's like, we already know what time it is. It doesn't really matter. And a point that other people brought up where it's kind of wild that Bill continues to be the voice of reason, considering how bullish he was, but he's changed a lot in between the seasons. To be fair, we saw these little moments here and there where he's grown, but he's grown a very large amount in between season 2 and 3 that he's like even recognizing, like, because he knows that he was here. He's like, I witnessed it firsthand, the Chinatown situation, how much of a delicate balance, and when that delicate balance is torn asunder, what that can mean not only for Chinatown but for the rest of San Francisco. Like, it can turn nasty, it can turn to a bloodbath, it turned to a full-blown war like it did. And there was so much death, there was so much destruction, there was so much blood spill. He's trying to keep the peace in that regard, and Buckley's not doing anything to help it, which is ironic considering he wants to not have bloodshed in the streets. That's why Atwood's not going as hard as he probably would, because Buckley's trying to wait until after the election, and then it's like, oh yeah, we go full steam ahead, we're going to try and get them kicked out of this country, but also, like, we need to end fighting. Because it's so interesting, because all he wanted was Mylene to spill some blood, but I guess now that he's in the situation he's in, you're actually going to compromise my position, because I'm the one kind of dictating things now, so now that I'm in position to push forward the legislation, or at least try to push forth the legislation I would want to, then I need to there not to be any stains on my campaign and stuff, my mayorship. So, but yeah, Bill had to kind of rein Atwood back in, and he was like, yo, don't ever put your hands on me again. It's like, bro, you're the one out here flipping out. Like, yeah, some of the guys are kind of going hard in the paint like that, and some of them are just ready, like, oh, like the dude that had a gun on home be like, oh, please give me an excuse to pull this trigger. But it's like, yeah, Atwood's the one that went harder in the paint, so. Because even Bill calls him out later on when he's talking to Lee. It's like, yeah, the idiot went through the front door. Like, you would have caught the Hopway. Like, the fact is, they had just left with the printing press. By the time they showed up, they were still like down the street pushing it, because Chow saw Lee at the Hopway, so he knew like something was up. Like, so I don't know if he'd already given them heads up, like, okay, people are investigating, but he gave them the heads up this time of like, yo, they're probably rolling deep. He knows how the cops are going to think and how they're going to operate. So, and things would have been so much worse, because for one, the Hopway would have been up shit's creek without a paddle. It would have blown Yeonmin's situation. It would have like screwed her over completely. So, which we learned a little bit more about her circumstances. The only reason why she learned all this printing stuff, her dad didn't teach her. She had to learn on her own. And it's basically, I brought this up previously because I know that's how that traditionally works in, especially in a time frame like this, but especially in an Asian household. Like, the son is the one who's supposed to inherit things, because the son has seniority over the daughters. Like, it's that, I do believe, and I could be mistaken, this could be ignorance on my part, I do believe that's still prevalent in a lot of Asian cultures. I think that's still pretty prevalent even present day, and like, right, it still has that it's not even just, that's not even just like an Asian thing, because obviously it's like that same thing happens with royalty, like in like with the kings and queens. It's like, right, if there's a son and daughter, like obviously the kingship the throne goes to the son first. I think even that the son's younger than the daughter, it still goes to the son, because even though the daughter's older, it's still a male-centric thing. It's like they have seen that male has seniority over female, no matter what the age difference might be. So, but she was like, yeah, I knew good thing I learned what I did, because my brother's an idiot. So it's actually because I was wondering whether or not her dad knew about her skills, but it's like, no, my brother has no talent in this. So she's either been covering for her brother, making sure that they're able to keep work going, and her dad either is aware of it and just kind of ignores it because it's like, yeah, that's my daughter, whatever, I don't care. Or maybe he does recognize it, but it's still the thing of, yeah, you're my daughter, I don't care. You'll never take over the business. Because for her, the moment her dad dies, she's leaving, because like her brother's not enough of a reason to stay here, because there's nothing for her in China, and she plans on kind of making a life for herself here, as in the US, but she's going to find like somewhere else to go. She's like, right, places in like the north and stuff like that. Once again, I don't know what the full opportunities are around this country for a Chinese woman, because even she's like, right, if I don't have a skill, it's either going to be prostitution, or basically they're going to just assume you're a prostitute and then ship you back home. So, might as well have a tradable skill like, printing. So, obviously working with the Hopway was not her dreams, ambitions, and obviously that has complicated things when you have Assam fighting a whole bunch of cops, beating them up, and she even helped out. It's a self-preservation thing. Luckily enough, it's dark. These cops are racist, so all Chinese people look the same to them. But I'm sure Bill and Lee can piece it together who it would be. Like, when you hear about a fighter in Chinatown, pretty quick on their feet, most people are going to assume it's going to be Assam. He's the recognizable hero. Like, that's where they're like, oh, could you recognize him? And the guy was like, no, it's a Chinese person. I'm like, who? Obviously not what he said, not those exact words, but I'm not going to use his exact words. He's like, who cares? Like, it doesn't really matter. It was just a Chinese person. It's like I said, I think Lee and Bill have had enough crossover with Assam to know, like, it was most likely him. They already figured, right, Chow's the one that had to give the go ahead to the Hopway to like hide the printing press. So I wonder did because they were just casually going about their game at the on the top floors and stuff. So that makes me think that was something Assam must have quickly gotten back there and told Yeonmin, like, let's go. Because I don't think Young June knew, and none of them upstairs knew about that. Once again, this is on Young June for spreading out the wealth. Like, he should have kept it low key. Once again, Assam had his worries and concerns, and so did Chow. But it's like, yeah, Young June's kind of stubborn and stuck in his way. He's so busy trying to prove himself and have the upper hand. He went too hard at the paint, too fast, too quickly, and it led to, like, once again, what happened to him with like Atwood was kind of a separate thing, but obviously it's all connected to, like, right, they wouldn't have blown up your spot directly like this if it wasn't for you putting out those counterfeit bills like you did, and Lee being very good at what he does. Even even Mosley was like, oh, I get why the other cops hate you. You're the only one that actually want to work for a living. It's like, yo, from the beginning when we got introduced to Lee, he's the only one that really we saw put in the work. Bill's kind of shifted over to start doing that himself, so... Kind of saying with the Hopway really quickly, there is the situation with, we learned the musician's name. And maybe they said it last episode, but I don't think they did. But Marcel, he's the musician that Hong is kind of falling for. And they go to like this private club where I think it's like, right, you can be with, it almost feels like a Circus Soleil type of performative, like, kind of club a little bit. But it's like, hey, you can be whoever you are, you can be with whoever you want. Like, here is where you can just be free. And it seemed like there was kind of like an orgy thing kind of going, not an orgy, but it's kind of like, yeah, everyone's having sex around each other. It's like, unless, and they were having sex with each other, then it'd be an orgy, but it's just kind of like, I guess that still counts. I guess in my head, I think of an orgy of like everyone's switching off having sex, but it's like even people being isolated, like, oh, this couple over here is having sex, or these two people over here are having sex. It's like, that's still an orgy. If you're all gathered in one particular place, all having sex separately, but all together in the same room, it still counts, I guess. I never get too caught up in the definition of an orgy until just now. I never really thought about it too much. We also, well, let's shift over to My Ling's circumstances really quickly. I kind of read that situation. I was kind of wondering, like, I was kind of getting those vibes last episode, but I was like, maybe I'm reading too much into it, so I didn't say anything about it. The moment My Ling was talking to Bernard and he was getting so like, oh, you're so fascinating. Oh, there's a lot more to you. And she's like, oh, these business opportunities. And she drops out those fat stats of cash. And it's like, okay, so this is what time it is. Like, cool, you can invest it and be able to do what you want with it. Even later on, he's like, oh, how about I get my fee of 5%? She's like, no, go ahead, take 10%, and that way it'll be a long, fruitful relationship. And then he tries to make a move on her, and you're like, oh, there it is. I already kind of felt like that's what time it was. I was almost curious whether or not Eliza was in on it, because I thought it was going to be a thing of like, oh, once again, she saw My Ling as a bit of a plaything, and I thought that when it was all said and done, that might be kind of almost like a menage a trois of like, oh yeah, I want to see you have sex with this Chinese woman, and it kind of be a thing. Like, I was kind of getting those vibes. No, Bernard made a move. Eliza was upset. She saw what happened. She saw My Ling be like, no, we can't do that. Not unless she saw it the last second when they were pulling apart, but it's like, Eliza can say what she wants. She saw what was what, and she just took Bernard's word. Not really. It's self-preservation, because if word got out about her man making a move on a Chinese woman, it would have looked bad upon her just in the greater society. It's like, you embarrassed me. I brought you in. I brought you I brought you in from your squalor here, and this is what you do. You betrayed me, and now having her arrested as if it was kind of like solicitation, like, oh, like, you know, in a prostitute way. And she's like, all that I've done for you, slaps her in the face. I was like, you suck. I already was kind of worried that you were going to suck, but like, you're grandstanding and you have no leg to stand on. I hope My Ling comes back and strikes with a vengeance. She's going to put you and Bernard in your place, and it's going to be so good because, well, My Ling let her guard down. She thought she was so in control of this because she thought, like, right, if she spoke the same language as everyone here, that it's like, right, it's like, you, once again, you underestimate how much your skin and where you come from matters. You think, like, once again, her thing was, our money is as green as theirs. But it's like, yes, but yours money will always have an asterisk beside it because your money doesn't belong there. You don't belong there. You are a guest here. That could get revoked at any moment in time. So I think legitimately My Ling was using them, but even she was kind of caught off guard because she was like, no, I thought everything was fine. Like, no, Bernard's the one that made a move. It didn't, like, it's about saving face, and it's like, right, you can't trust anyone. And it's so interesting too because Kong Pak and Lee Young were having this conversation while they were training because Lee Young couldn't focus because it's like, oh, are you worried about her spending all that time in with the ducks, or are you more so worried about the effect this is going to have on the Tong? But for him, it's like, right, she won't let me protect her. She's so, because it's like, you're in a place where people like us are hated and despised. I mean, are we forgetting everything that went down last season when they literally lynched Jacob? You know, are we all forgetting like what they did, busting into Chinatown, killing and destroying our home? But it's like, she thought like, right, those are uncivilized people. These are civilized people. Money and all that prestige, it matters. She thought she can enter that world, but that's not your world. You know, and the sad thing is she legitimately wanted to be a part of it because I think being back in Chinatown is just a reminder of like, it's still a reminder of where she came from. She can't fully escape herself and her past as Zhao Jing, and I think this was kind of like her way to, once again, go out there, have a further reach, expand her power, but also expand herself. Like, she was getting swept. It was no longer just a means to an end. She got swept up in all of this. She started believing the bullshit that she was kind of selling. She started believing it herself, and this was kind of a rude awakening. And I think Lee Young is probably going to come in, swoop in, and save her. But I can't wait for sweet vengeance when My Ling comes back and puts Bernard. And it's like, right, you forgot who you're messing with because you're thinking, oh, they're looking at it like, oh, she's a prominent businesswoman and stuff like that, because all their businesses are legitimate at this point in time. What you did not realize is you were fucking with one of the largest tongs in Chinatown, because she's the leader of it, and you don't know that, and you crossed the wrong person, and that's going to come back to bite you in the ass, and I cannot wait for that to kind of play out. So, and speaking of revenge, we do pick up in the aftermath of the Sonoma situation. A lot of those women died. And, you know, Nellie's trying to handle it her way of like, no, like, we'll kind of get some supplies. But it's like, no, this place is done. Like, this place, for one, it could always get rebuilt, but what this place meant is forever destroyed. This place will always be tainted with the blood of so many people. This was supposed to be our happy place. This was supposed to be our new home, our new start. But when that was tarnished, it's forever stained now, so we can't go back. All we can do is go forward. And so it's like, I'm going to have to go back to Chinatown, and I'm bringing these girls with me. This is how I can protect them. It's like, yes, happiness is one thing. It's great that everyone was happy here, but you can't be happy if you're dead. So she goes back to the brothel, and she slips back on who she was. She not only had to pick up the sword again last episode, but now she's got to go back to kind of, I don't know if it's going to be the same thing of, right, maybe even the ambition she had at one point in time had kind of been nipped in the bud, because that was all kind of connected with Nellie, of like the life that they were going to build together along with all the women there on this land. But now it's like, even Toy's plans from the beginning of like what she had planned and how she was fusing that with Nellie's plan is probably kaput now too, because now she's like, right, if I ever do that again, like, there's no guarantee the women would be safe. So what Toy has planned for now, I don't know. She's in a situation where it's not necessarily she's licking her wounds, but it is a situation of she's down. She's kind of disheartened by the whole thing. And even Assam's like, yeah, you need to probably take some time. But she's like, do you realize how long it took me to get in this dress? So she goes on, puts on that like the great host that she is, and ended up kind of just acting like everything's okay. I thought it was interesting with her and Bill, which I guess ever since she started paying Bill back in season 1, apparently I guess that's been going on the entire time. Or maybe that's something that, maybe it was that one time, but in between season 2 and 3, she's been paying him more and more for the purposes of keeping the cops away from her shop. Because I guess it's like, it's set up to be like, oh, this is closed down, but secretly it's actually kind of running fine. Or maybe it was closed down, but it seemed, because I did kind of not pay attention to the fact is, it was up and running even in like episode 1, because episode 1 of this season, because Chow was running things. So it's probably just like, hey, Bill and the others make it seem like everything's shut down when in actuality it isn't. So, and even Bill's like, right, you've always done right by me, Atoy, but I won't be able to keep like Atwood and everyone away forever. But even, for Atoy, it's like, in Chinatown, there is no forever. Only have today and tomorrow, which Bill and her kind of like, cheers to that statement, because it's so true considering how many stories have been cut short in Chinatown. I mean, last season let alone, but also what stories and people were cut down in Sonoma. So I'm curious to see what happens. Because Assam was like, yo, let me help you get revenge. But she's like, no, it's too late. So I don't even know if she's going to reprise, like, try and go after Douglas and them. And, because through the legal system, Nellie tried, but it didn't work out because the judge is in Douglas's pocket. And just for her, it's like, you were my husband's friend. I can't believe you do this. She's like, yeah, I do whatever I can to help you out to make things easier. She's like, you're a monster. You're disgusting. You're doing all this for what? Money? You have more than enough. But that's the thing. Someone with money and power, you're always going to want more. It's going to, especially for someone who grew up probably, as we know, he worked tooth and nail to get what he has. So for someone who had nothing, you're always going to want more, because you're always going to be afraid of losing that again. You never want to go back to where you were, what you came from. So showing his true colors, he's like, oh, the psychopath that he is, being like, oh, I have no idea what that's all about. I had no part to play in that. And I'm curious to see what Nellie's going to do, because no legal action can be taken. The land has been taken from her regardless of it all. So we'll see what action she can take at all, and if Atoy is going to like take up her blade and try and cut Douglas down. Granted, I thought him and Leary kind of struck a deal last episode, but it seems like no, they're more so striking a deal now. Because, hey, we could do so much together. Once again, there's only a limit to what you could do with your fists, but with your power and your influence, like the fact is together, we can change so much. So it's almost in that same vein as the Buckley of it all, except I don't know if Leary's getting so caught up, because Buckley, he always saw through Buckley's BS. I don't know if he's seeing through Douglas's. Like, Douglas is willing to kind of do whatever it takes to benefit himself, and he will use and cast aside anyone he wants. To be fair, everything with Nelly was also professional. Like, he did all that shitty, terrible stuff on from a professional level because of the money he's going to need and that he's going to make in the long run with the railroad and everything, and working with the government to kind of like get the world to kind of tilt in the way he wants them to. But it was also personal because, once again, he has a thing for Nellie, and is like, well, and she even said like, oh, you've always been the type of person that if you kind of destroy what you can't have, and that was kind of what he was doing. He kind of making a point of, well, if I can't have you, I'm not going to let Atoy have you. But even if I do let her have you, I'm going to destroy everything that you kind of built for yourself. You should have taken the deal while you had the chance. It's like, you did that just to be spiteful across the board, you know? How that relationship between between Leary and Douglas continues to develop. He is giving, hey, those 40 Irishmen you wanted to have jobs, I'll give them jobs, because it's like, right, Buckley doesn't see you for the man that you really are and your worth, but also Thaler is someone who, I keep saying Thaler, it's Thayer, is someone who is all about, keeping the status quo of like Chinese labor. So neither one's a good option. So it's kind of time to forge your own path with me to kind of benefit you in the long run. Once again, as he brought up last episode, the systemic elements of this country, like the change in himself with his power and his reach. So, especially at a time when when Leary is, one more blow to the chest could be an issue, especially after his fight, 2 episodes ago? Still dealing with the aftermath of his fight with Assam. Speaking of Buckley, even though I was talking about Leary but kept saying Buckley over and over again, Buckley is having dinner with Miss Archer. I think her character's name's Catherine, and he's kind of a nervous mess around her, because once again, his only proclivity when it comes to women has always been ladies of the night. More recently, probably like post his wife leaving him, but now it's like, oh, here's someone who's taken an interest in you and sees you for who you are. Because now for him, I think for the first time, he's come across someone he does view as an equal, who sees him as a great man. And because everyone else around him, he doesn't have anyone that likes him. Literally everyone hates him. And so for Catherine to be like, yo, you're amazing. She kind of talks about herself, because I think there's a lot of parallels, because, well, Catherine sacrificed getting married and having a family to kind of travel the world, which she knows that came with its sacrifices, but she knows in the long run that she would, take those sacrifices all over again to live the life that she's lived. Because now it's a situation, because she's an older woman now, and especially at this time, because it's like, let's say she's late 30s at best. It's like, say something like, what I mean at most is what I'm kind of saying. Like, let's say she's late 30s. It's like, oh, you might as well dig a grave. It's that type of situation. So for her, it's like, I'm a woman of a certain age, so the only people that are going to be around me are men who are divorcees and widowers and stuff like that. So that's all I kind of have going in my wheelhouse for me. So, but Buckley's like, right, but how will you view me if I end up losing this? But she's like, I will view you as, that will be no indictment about you as the person you are. But she's also like, I'm not going to let you lose. So it's like, man, she's down bad. And he's even been like, yeah, you could call me Walter. Where I'm like, this is the first time we've ever heard Buckley's first name, because everyone just calls him Buckley. I don't think no one's really referred to him as Walter before. Everyone's like, oh, Buckley, because no one's been on a first name basis with him before, which just showcases how real this is. It is a thing of he likes her. I think she likes him too. Once again, it's a means to an end, because she's even like, hey, let people stare at us and see us out, because it's going to work out for you in the long run. She's kind of making it clear what time it is in that regard of like, oh, this will benefit you, like a figured this whole thing would. I figured that's what the setup was going to be the moment she was introduced. But also, she apparently really likes him. There are two peas in a pod, which is kind of a bad thing because we know how much of a garbage, shitty person Buckley is. If she's just as manipulative and toxic and terrible as he is, they're kind of a match made in heaven, which is kind of a bad thing for everyone else. Because Buckley's right-hand guy, I can only assume Buckley gave the go-ahead. What I completely forgot about last episode, ran that story about Thayer having a brother-in-law who is an opium addict. But Thayer came out in front of everybody, and it's like, right, they put my family's business out there, but at the end of the day, this is what my brother-in-law is going through, but he fought in a war like so many others and came back, messed up. And all we can do is lend him help and compassion as a family. So all that, you could see Buckley's new dude, like Buckley's new Buckley, being like, damn it, that didn't work. In fact, he swung that around and spun it like damn gold. It makes him seem even more honorable of like, oh, despite his brother-in-law's proclivities and vices, he's sticking with him and not giving up on family, still fighting for family and fighting for those who are a soldier who the system has kind of left behind and kind of forgotten about, where society's kind of fallen and left them behind, because these are people who are struggling after being through what they've been through, fighting for our dear country. So that all worked out well, and just you could tell Buckley's dude was like super pissed about, just kind of annoyed how it's like the guy's good. Despite Catherine trying to shit on him by like his like platitudes and saying like, oh, it's just kind of BS, it won't get him that far, guy's really good at it. So we'll see how that plays out. It's all going to turn out and work out for Buckley in the end. We just don't know how the journey there is going to go. So, and finally, last thing to kind of cover is the whole Assam and Yeonmin of it all, of them finally hooking up. They've been setting that up for the past two episodes of especially last episode. You could tell the both of them are kind of finally catching those vibes. She was kind of giving those vibes for a little while. It seemed like he kind of started responding to that. But for her, it's like, right, I dragged into all of this stuff, and now because of you, I didn't want any of this. This isn't what I want my life to be. But hey, we're covered in rain. Our clothes are wet. Let's get to some sexy time. So... And also, Assam has no idea what happened to Young Jun, so when he comes back, how they're going to play that out. I guess Young Jun, I could see Assam stepping in that interim time and leading the charge, and then ultimately, when Young Jun comes back, it's going to be on site. It's going to be beef when he finds out, oh, so you took charge. You were just waiting for the opportunity. The issues are there. They haven't gone away. Young Jun still has his issues with Assam. He's just not letting them float to the surface fully. They float to the surface every once in a while, but like I said, Assam's going to lead the charge while Young Jun's away, and it's like, right, if you don't get me out, or if you take too long to get me out, it's going to rub Young Jun the wrong way. I don't know. We'll have to wait to see. I mean, what can they really do in the time frame, considering, well, like, I don't know if they have any recourse to really help out Young Jun. I don't know if they have anything that can really do anything. So we'll ultimately have to wait to see where the next episode takes us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.